Hello and welcome to the gallery. My name is Jon and today we'll be painting some more Horus Heresy era. Horus Heresy. Hello and welcome to the gallery. My name is Jon and today we'll be painting some more Horus Heresy era Space Marines. Last time we were here, we painted up a couple of big boys, and that was the Imperial Fists and Iron Warriors. Now we're going to paint Space Wolves and Thousand Suns. They are, of course, quite fitting together because of, well, the lore says so, and also I like Thousand Suns, and my son likes Space Wolves, mainly 40k, of course. Now I'm painting them a little bit differently than what you can see in Warhammer TV and various other places. I'm painting them more like I would feel like they should look like. That's a lot of likes, so press like. Hey, like. Yeah. Let's start with the Space Wolf.
Like I said, I'm putting my own spin on the Space Wolves. I mean, the regular paint scheme is much more grey than what I'm going for. I'm using the 40k undertones, and then I will be working on it a little bit because I find this blue grayish look is kind of a necessity for them. So I'm painting them a little bit, maybe 240k, but in my opinion I like this look, so I'm gonna stick with it a little bit, but with some slight different of nuances. I'm basically just doing dry brushes to get the undercoat down. I start with the Fang. I used an airbrush, but you can just spray it on or paint it, whatever you feel like. Then I'm dry brushing Rust Grey over that, and then a hint of Fenrisian Grey on top of that, just to grab some details. After we've done all this dry brushing, however, we are gonna tone it down, and this is mainly just like an undercoat underneath contrast paints that we'll be using on top of it, which will darken this down a little bit and get rid of some of that blue look that is maybe a little bit too much like 40k. So we're gonna go for some sort of hybrid between the 40k look and the 30k look, but that's the look I would like to go for if I was painting up an army of this. Next is Space Wolves Grey, and it's quite settled because I don't use it that much, so let's shake it up. And then we're just brushing that over everything, and as you can see, it darkens it down a little bit because we have a darker undertone, but you're still keeping that highlights that we put down with the dry brush. Now, don't glob it on too thick because then you will lose all the details we were working on, but still have it there because the dry brush can be a little bit rough, and this will sort of fix many mistakes that we made. Next, I'm going with another contrast paint, and this Basilicanum Grey mixed with contrast medium. It's about 50-50, maybe a little bit more contrast medium than Basilicanum Grey. And again, we're just putting it thinly on, and it will dry a little bit clearer than it looks like that there. But you get a slightly darker tone, a slightly more grey tone, and it's closer to the 30k variant that you can see in pictures, but still with a 40k look. Next, it's the Corn Red for the shoulder pad, because that's a 30k look that is definite and kind of necessity. So we're putting a red shoulder pauldron on one side, and it's 2-3 coats to get sort of an even color for this, and Bob's your uncle. Now we're going into metallic paints, and that's basically all the parts of the gun and the metallic bits here and there. There are a quite fair few. So let's just base coat this a little bit now. And don't forget to put a little bit of silver into the eye, because when we use contrast paint over these bright silver colors, it looks pretty damn fine in my opinion. Next, for the leather bits like the holster, some straps here and there, the thing between the armor plates, the under armor. We're using just palette with flesh, which I think is a nice and even color to go over there, because again, we're doing a quick method, so just single undercoat and then a contrast paint over it. And that contrast paint is Black Templar. And we're going to paint that over the shoulder armor and also over the metallic knobs on the shoulder armor. And we're not thinning it down or anything like that. We're also painting it over parts of the backpack and all the metallic bits. And when we put down the undercoat, immediately when we've already put it down before it dries in any sort of capacity, I'm just going to run my finger over the exposed nubbins on the shoulder and on the brighter bits on the shoulder, on the backpack and weapon and everything, and the black comes right off and you get this nice look with a little bit of shading in it. Of course, you could just thin down your Black Templar and do a couple of coats, one over the silver, one over the other bit, but I felt lazy, so I did it like this. Of course, you're gonna get a black finger, but hey, that's what the sink is for. You can wash your hands. It's not that big of a deal. Another way to do this white might be with Nuln Oil, just 2-3 coats of it. However, it never will get as black as the black contrast paints are going. And because we still have that blue underneath, the edges and stuff like that will still look a little bit in the same tone as the rest of the armor. It won't get a white highlight or anything like that. You'll get a blue edge highlight. Well, blue edge, not edge highlight really. And again, you can see the difference when you're painting the under armor. You get a white brim as opposed to the silver and the blue, which has this blue brim to it. And in my opinion, I think that's kind of nice. And now we're just going over all the silver bits and all the under armor bits and just putting some Black Templar as well as on the shoulder and just dragging your finger a little bit to get that highlight going. It's simple, it doesn't look perfect, but 30 of these guys running on the table and you're fine. Then Flesh Terror Red into the eye and you get this nice glowy effect of the eye lens, which is kind of nice in my opinion at least.
Now that we've finished off Space Wolves, let's go straight into the more interesting faction, in my opinion, and that's the Thousand Sons. Again, we're painting it similar to what the lore says they should look like, but I'm putting a little bit of different colors here and there, mainly because that's what I felt like at the time. If I'm right or wrong, it's not really the issue, because you paint your Marines like you want to paint your Marines. For me, this is how I painted them at this time. If I was painting up a whole army, I might change something a little bit up. But in my opinion, of course, what you feel like doing is what you should do. Because even though the lore says this is the truth, you can do your own truth, because these are your own little plastic guys.
Next we're starting on the Thousand Sun, and it's quite simple, this paint job. It's basically all down to the undercoat, and I'm using Vallejo Silver, which is a really shiny silver paint, and I love it. It's easy to brush on. I used an airbrush to put it on, but it's quite easy to brush on as well. Next, I'm just painting over this silver undertone with Flesh Terror's Red. If you have access to an airbrush, by all means use it, you'll get a lovely result. But I'm using a brush for the entirety of these Legion armies. And the main thing here is to really drag it out, the paint, get it on evenly but quickly, and watch that it doesn't pull while you're putting it on, and then leave it to dry. If you start fiddling it with it, you'll get these streaking lines on it, and that's not a good look. Next, we're just going to clean up the guy a little bit. I'm using the same silver as was before, now with a brush and a very thin brush, picking out the eye lenses and bits and bobs here and there, mainly because I want to have this silver look everywhere as an undertone, so you get a shiny effect or thereabouts here and there on him. It'll make him look a little bit more ethereal, a little bit more not natural, which is kind of fitting for the Thousand Sons. I mean, they have this history of sorcery and warp magic, and they got into a lot of trouble with it, hence the Space Wolves in the first video. And this is going to be painted here and there all over him, like I said. The only bit that won't be touched with a silver paint is the strap of the gun. If I would have bothered, I probably would have cut the strap off or something like that, but in this case I did not. So we're using a shiny metallic undercoat under everything to get this interesting look. Next, it's polished gold, and this just to pick out a few details here and there. The glows on his pauldron, the decoration on his chest armor, something on the backpack, a little bit here and there. Note to self for future endeavors, this polished gold goes great over the red, but horrible over silver. I like this gold look, I really do, but this is not a fun paint to use. It's really translucent, as you can see. It's like painting water over oil. It's quite dreadful, and it took a fair few amount of layers to get this to look somewhat okay. Like I said, the little strap on his gun, that's painted with wraithbone, so it's ready for something interesting on top of it later on. Again with Black Templar, like we did with previously, but now with the silver undertone, and you can see it's quite a lot different, and this looks more interesting in my opinion. I probably will use this for more of the shiny armored guys moving forward. Be careful, however, that it doesn't go a little bit into the red armor, because if it does, you lose a lot of that lovely red shiny look that we had. And the same as we did with the Space Wolf, I'm brushing this also over all the silver details and then just dragging my finger off it a little bit so we get a nice looking highlight here and there. It's a simple way to get something going. It's basically the same that you would use if you were using oil washes and then just odorless mineral spirits to drag off the edge. It's basically the same thing, just using contrast paint and a finger or a Q-tip or something like that. I'm putting a little bit of black also here around the globes, and then I will be going with Cryptek Armor Shade over it as well, just to get a little bit of a warmer tone to it. And the Cryptek Armor Shade is going over all the gold details of this guy, be it on the backpack or on his gun or the globes here and there, just to warm it up a little bit, because, well, it's mainly just to fix my error of using this gold paint on places where it obviously was not working out as it should have. But as you can see, the armor shade really did help it out. It made it a lot warmer and a lot nicer. Now here's where we enter the weird area. I'm putting warp lightning green paint on the rest of the silver detail on his gun casing, on his belt and everything, mainly because I feel like it's a more warp lightningy look, and that feels fitting for the Thousand Suns. Full disclosure, if I was still doing it again, I probably would change this out for something a little bit different, because it felt a little bit too Christmassy when I was painting it. I mean, this just looks like a hate-filled Santa Claus at this point. However, I decided to do this, so I just full tilt and I put green on all the bits that I was planning on having green. Oh, and afterwards, when I looked at it and he looked like a little angry Santa Claus, I decided to put in a little bit different color here and there just to mix it up a little bit. Again, I'm with Black Templar, and now I'm going over the strap. And like I said, I felt it was a bit too green, so Dragon of Nightshade is a blue tinted shade, so I put that over the green, and it gave it of a little different of a hue, a little bit more interest to it. Don't do overly too much, because then you just get this dirty green look. But just a little bit here and there, so you get a blue shadow in the recesses, which is kind of interesting with the green, and it makes it a little bit more sorcery. I'm going for that word. That sounds like a horrible pronunciation, but that's my jam. Next, to finish off the guy, because he's getting kind of dark and monotone and stuff like that, let's take some Necron compound and just do a gentle dry brush here and there, mainly on the stuff facing up and something like that, to get some silver highlights on this shiny armor. And it really does sell the point of this being this shiny, chromy red looking armor. And that's the main idea here, to get a shiny, ethereal look to him, sort of.
Okay, now we got 2 Marines painted up in the color scheme of 2 separate factions, or thereabouts. Let's just jump into the reveals and see how we like them.
And here we have a Space Wolf in all his glory. I mean, he's a little bit more blue than that you're supposed to look like, but he's painted in a really quick fashion, and he looks cool, in my opinion, of course. And that's the only opinion that matters with your own models, I would say. And of course, to counteract him, here we have this awesome red-looking Thousand Sun. And I really dig this look. The green looks a little bit dodgy, I must admit, but after the blue bits were put on, it looks okay in my opinion. And they will go well with the collection that is now growing of 30k Horus Heresy Marines. Thank you very much for joining me here today. There are links in the description for all kinds of stuff, social media and various tidbits. You do with it what you will, like and share and subscribe and hit that little bell guy in the corner. And let the colors flow. But until next time, farewell.